The Democracy Defense Project is aimed at combating election misinformation and restoring civility in politics. The organization's board recently released a new poll about how Arizona voters feel about election integrity. And to learn more, we welcome board members, former Congressman Matt Salmon and former State Representative Daniel Hernandez. Gentlemen, good to have you both here. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here. I mean, at this time, just to get anyone who's not out there doing something with elections is great. Good to have your time. Matt, we'll start with you. Democracy Defense Project fighting disinformation, how?
Well, lots of ways. I think first and foremost, we're out there sharing truthful information with people as much as we possibly can, like coming on your show. We've done a lot of media appearances, but we're also doing meetings with small groups and just doing everything that we can to help people understand just how many safeguards are built into our system here in Arizona. And once people really understand what's going on at the elections, I think they feel a lot more comfortable. But it's been a real chore.
Yeah, it has, and I want to get to the poll numbers here in a second. But is that true? I mean, when people hear, because we get the information out all the time, and these numbers suggest, as we'll get to them in a second, that a lot of folks still aren't buying it.
I think one of the big things that we're seeing, not just with the elections themselves, but the process around the elections, is a lot of lack of information, because most people that I work with and talk to all the time are in the thick of it. But for everyday Arizonans, they're not thinking about, is there an ID verification when you go vote on election day? Is the machine connected to the internet? So these are things that most people don't even know about. So yes, there is a lot of information out there, but us coming on shows like this and talking to folks every day about the Democracy Defense Project is crucial to making sure we're actually informing people, because what the polling showed us is people have concerns that once they actually know what the laws are in Arizona, which are some of the most stringent and some of the toughest when it comes to security, and when we're looking at the things that we already do that people don't know that we do, and we tell them, well, did you know that you have to have signature verification, you have to have ID verification? These are things that help restore confidence once they understand the process, but not knowing the process is a big barrier.
And also the number of bipartisan eyes that are actually at each polling place, required by statute here in Arizona, that every party, including the independents, are adequately represented. And then there's tons of volunteers from both the Democrat and the Republican parties that are there watching over to make sure that everything is done the way it's supposed to be done.
And yet, Matt, we got 60% of Arizona voters are concerned about election integrity, and 80% of Republicans that's in this survey now, and maybe this is before they got the information you're talking about, but they're still saying that the 2020 election was stolen from Donald Trump. What can you say to these folks?
I think that part of it is that in Republican circles today, there's a lot of bullying going on. Trying to shame you if you don't believe that the election was stolen, that you're not somehow not patriotic, or you're a rhino. And I think there's some of that that's spillover. But when you have, the top Republican in the country, the guy that's running for president right now, and the top candidate right now, Republican candidate, Kari Lake, that consistently spread this kind of misinformation, it's not helpful.
Is there, and you kind of referred to this earlier, but is there a way to break through that? I mean, you can only say so many times that not a single court case found it. There still is no proof of this. I can say that till I turn blue, but there are folks who are going to say, yeah, but you're part of the deep state, et cetera, et cetera. How do you get past that?
I think you just said something that's really important. It's easy for me as a Democrat, where most of my party and most of the Arizonans that I, share identity with as a party, believe that the election wasn't stolen. It's really difficult for folks on the Republican side. So when we're talking about how do we break through, having folks like Jan Brewer, having folks like Matt Salmon, who are not liberal in any sense of the word, member of the Freedom Caucus when you were in Congress.
Founding member
of the Freedom Caucus. That is what we need to talk about. So that's why the Democracy Defense Project is so important, because it's bringing together Democrats and Republicans. I don't agree with a lot of policy issues with Congressman Salmon, what we do agree on is the elections in Arizona were fair, free, and secure. And as we are heading into Election Day on Tuesday, people need to understand that there are things that may make you pause and think, oh, is something wrong happening? only because we are hearing misinformation coming from the top. So when it's long lines at the ballot box, when it's taking days for the election results to come back, this is not some nefarious plot or scheme. You know, people like Matt, people like Bill Gates, people like Stephen Richer are talking about, we're going to have long lines. We have the longest ballot that we've had in almost 2 decades. It's going to take you a while to fill it out if you didn't fill it out early.
Matt, we've got ballot stuffing. 87% of Republicans think that there's ballot stuffing going on. Undocumented voting, 88% of Republicans. And voting by mail, 78% of Republicans think there's a problem. And for Democrats, 59, 54, and 51, over half of Democrats think that there's ballot stuffing going on here. What is going on?
Again, there's so much misinformation that's been foisted on people over the last several years, nonstop, and I think that you know, that certainly is part of the equation. But you know, maybe after this election, things will cool down a little bit. That's my hope and my prayer.
Yeah, you think that'll happen?
I hope so. And I think regardless of who wins on election day, it's important that we stay and focus on the realities, which is Arizona has some of the toughest laws, some of the biggest safeguards. When we're talking about paper ballots, when we're talking about things not being connected to the internet, these are all things that Arizona has been doing and doing well for decades. And mail-in ballots are something that Republicans used to love and trust.
Right.
Republicans put it into place in the 90s.
Right.
And then we saw the shift in the 2020 election to go against that. And now we're seeing, I think, people understanding that mail-in ballots are safe, secure, and the way that we've been voting for almost 3 decades here in Arizona.
I found it interesting that eliminating mail-in voting and allowing mail-in voting both got like 30%.
Right.
What was that all about?
I think that people have found mail-in voting to be extremely convenient. I do want to declare that I was part of the legislature when we passed the mail-in voting, and there were 2 Republicans in the Senate that voted against it. One was Jan Brewer and the other was Matt Salmon. So, you know, back then I had some real concerns. How can it be secure? And since that time, I've used, you know, the early voting almost nonstop. I've had to, you know, I was a member of Congress for 10 years and I had to vote by mail. And I've gone through the process and seen how completely secure it is. But one other thing, Ted, I wanted to point out that, you know, people are griping. It's never taken this long to do elections before. When I ran for governor in 2002 and I lost to Janet Napolitano by less than 1 point, it took 14 days to determine the outcome. And that was clear back in 2002.
And that is something that we have all learned here as we've had a number of election specials on the show, and Adrian Fontes and other election officials say, usually you don't know how long it takes because
people stop paying attention.
Well, they've been lopsided races. Yeah. When they're close,
when they're
as
close,
your race
they're going to take a while.
They're going to take a long time.
And remember when they had the hanging chads in Florida?
Of course.
In the 2000 election, 2001, and the Supreme Court ultimately decided, but remember how long that election took.
Well, and that brings up my last question for you is, with the state maybe not being so reliably Republican as it was in the past, where races you could pretty much figure out what was going on here by election night. You can't do that anymore. Is that in and of itself a problem?
No, I don't think it's a problem, but I think what is a problem is this expectation that we're going to know right away. The ballots have always taken a long time to count. It's just that when a news station declares it, people stop paying attention. Now that we are in this era of a very purple state, it's going to be the norm for the foreseeable future. And if it switches one way or the other, and we know right away on election night, you know, because somebody won by a large margin, that's not happening in these Arizona races anymore.
Yeah. Daniel Hernandez, Matt Salmon, real quickly.
I just really quick, I got to say this. Everybody out there, please learn to disagree without being so darn disagreeable. The fact is, it's okay to have different ideas. Fight for what you believe, champion what you believe, but don't hate people because they have different ideas than you do. That's not American.
That's a great idea and a great way to end the conversation. Gentlemen, good to have you both here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.